Hello everyone. Welcome to another part of What If Izuku, Kota and Eri had Shazam powers. If you enjoy the story, please like, subscribe and share the video. It really helps me out. I did not write the story. The original writer is Kayadon. Please go support them. Now let us dive in. Welcome to Hainen News. Said a newsman as he and a newswoman sat at the typical news desk and had the typical coffee. This morning we have more news on the vigilante group that appeared 2 weeks ago. The newswoman said as the screen showed pictures that had been taken of the three while in their battle with Overhaul, although they were barely visible in them due to their speed and the fact that the battle had taken place at night. There is no official name for this group, however, people have taken to calling them the Marvels, on account of their incredible power. Power which they'd been using quite often. The newsman interjected. Marvel Midori has been on a saving spree since then. He saved every resident of a collapsing apartment building, stopped 9 villain attacks, held up a collapsing bridge long enough for heroes to evacuate everyone on it, and has even been seen helping cats out of trees. Videos of Izuku in his transformed state, now called Marvel Midori by the people, doing amazing things and saving lives. Meanwhile, Marvel Aoi has been doing less heroic acts. Namely, he can be seen doing small labors for people, using his powers for personal gain. The newswoman said. Although all his clients have denied saying they paid him or asked him to do anything, it's highly unlikely that is the case. Videos of Kota in his transformed state, now called Marvel Aoi, doing small tasks, blowing the leaves off someone's lawn by blowing them away, doing tricks with his lightning at a party, and also helping cats out of trees, and the later accepting reward money. Marvel Aka has yet to be seen after her appearance in the battle with Kai Chisaki, and her disappearance after being struck by lightning. The newsman reported. A video taken on someone's phone showed Eri in her transformed state, now called Marvel Aka, right after she killed Overhaul. She was then struck by lightning and turned back into a little girl. However, the camera was too far away and it was too dark to actually see her transform, so it just looked like she had vanished. Little is known about these vigilantes, other than they are extremely powerful. The newswoman warned. And while the latter two may seem harmless and while Marvel Midori may seem very hero-like, they are dangerous vigilantes, responsible for the disappearance of Kai Chisaki and Dash. Pew. The television was turned off, by none other than Kota. It had been 2 weeks since getting their powers, and Kota had made some renovations to their room in the manor. Firstly, they now had 3 mattresses as well as pillows to go along with their blankets. He also had a busted-up old couch that was torn, with some fixes being made with duct tape. There was also an old refrigerator that, despite not being plugged in, still seemed to work. The same thing went for the old TV that also was not plugged in, but functioned as if it was. The room was a lot less dirty now, thanks to Eri doing her very best to clean the place up. Partially because she wanted to help out, and partially because Overhaul was a huge clean freak, and instilled these habits into her. Speaking of Eri, she had finally gotten out of her old clothes and into some new ones. They were cheap and she didn't have many, but it was better than what she was wearing before. Don't these losers have anything better to report? Kota complained. Also, what the heck are those names? They literally called green, blue, and red. Eri remained silent. She hadn't said much since she'd started living with Kota and Izuku. Almost as if she was scared she said the wrong thing and got kicked out. A few moments later, the door to the room opened, and Izuku walked in, looking a bit tired. There you are. Finally. You were out there for Dash. Kota looked at the new clock he got. 4 hours. How did you not detransform already? I just got better at using my power, Izuku yawned as he walked over to his mattress, collapsing on it promptly. You know, you could be using that power to make us some more money. I'm the only thing keeping us all from starving, Kota grumbled. I even got us some furniture. Oh yeah, how does that stuff work without electricity? Izuku asked as he pulled his blanket over his body. Izuku, we shoot lightning, Kota answered as if it was the most obvious thing in the world. I don't think that should work like that? Izuku responded. It's magic, who knows how it works? Kota shook his head. The point is that you should do something else besides play hero. Something that can actually help you. At least ask for a reward. Izuku frowned. Being a hero is its own reward. Kota rolled his eyes. Does that reward feed you or keep you warm? No. Izuku hesitantly admitted. Then it's a pretty bad reward. Kota dietpanen. Izuku shook his head and started to fall asleep. You just don't get it. I'm also learning how to use my powers. we're super strong, we could beat all kinds of villains if we learned how to use our powers right, we could even beat the villain that killed your parents. At that moment, both Kota and Eri froze. Eri froze because up until this point, she had no idea what had happened to either Izuku or Kota's parents. She was curious but too afraid to ask in fear of offending them. But to hear that Kota's parents were killed, that something so terrible happened to someone she cared about, she felt horrible. Kota on the other hand was busy processing this thought that Izuku planted in his head. Muscular. An A-rank villain. The man who killed his parents. He was no joke when it came to power. He killed 2 pro heroes after all. Never in all his life did he even think about revenge, because he didn't think he would be capable of it. But now, things were different. He had power. Incredible power. Power that puts most pros to shame. He could take down the man who took everything from him. Kota hopped up from the couch, ran over to Izuku's bed, before shaking the green-haired boy awake. Izuku! Wake up! Huh? Izuku opened his eyes, if only slightly. Next time you go out to do your hero thing, I'm going with you. Kota declared, a mix of determination and anger flashing in his eyes. Oh, okay, Izuku said. He was half asleep so he barely understood what Kota was saying. Cici, can I come too? Eri asked very hesitantly, while also looking away from the two of them. You want to help too, Eri? Kota asked her, slightly shocked by this request. Eri nodded, still looking away from the two of them. I want to help, like Izuku. This was partially the truth. She had always looked up to the way Izuku went out and helped people, just for the sake of helping people, but she'd always been too afraid of messing up and hurting someone to join him. But now that Kota was going, if she stayed then she would be left all alone. She didn't want to be alone. Not again. Okay, more the help the better I guess. Kota shrugit. The next day, in the Hoth marketplace. Ah! Screams erupted from the marketplace, as civilians ran, trying to get as far as they could from the threat. And what was the threat? A villain made almost entirely of sludge, was running through there, taking all the money he could from the various stores, and no one could stop him. The police were, as usual, unable to do anything, and Death Arms, the hero that had shown up, couldn't touch the villain. None of you can even touch me, the sludge villain said as it ran. The villain's eyes swiveled around and landed on a young woman. Ah, an invisibility cloak, you'll do. The villain said maliciously, as it lunged towards the girl. Ah, help me. The woman cried, paralyzed with fear. Swoosh. Suddenly as the sludge villain was about to grab her, there was a blur of red, and then she was gone. Huh? The villain paused, confused by the sudden disappearance of his soon-to-be victim. Hey, up here. The villain's eyes looked up, and he saw Izuku and Kota flying above him. Your quirk is so cool. Izuku told him. It's such a shame you're a villain. Yeah, it's really interesting. What do you think will happen if we zap him with lightning? Kota kuipet. Zap. Before the sludge villain could flee, Kota extended his finger and shot the villain with lightning. Bragragaf. The villain's body squirmed around frantically, as the electricity filled his body and caused him to completely lose control. Once Kota was finished, the villain melted into a pile of sludge on the ground. Is he gonna be okay? Izuku asked with concern on his face. Ow. The villain groaned. He's fine, Kota said. Eri flew up next to her friends, still wearing an unsure expression. Is it over? Hey! The three looked down as Death Arms marched up to them. Oh, it's you, how's your jaw? Kota asked smugly. Really funny. You are under arrest. Death Arms yelled at them. Kota laughed hysterically at that statement like it was the best joke he's heard in years. Really? And who's gonna arrest us? You. Last time you tried I hit you once and you got KO'd. Koaoi. Izuku said in a warning voice. They had all agreed that instead of using their real names, they would use the names the media had provided them, so no one could tell it was them. Let's just leave. Eri nodded in agreement, but Kota ignored them and flew down to the ground to face Death Arms. Come on, you want to arrest me, right? Try it, hero. Kota said with a vicious smirk. Grr. Hera. Death Arms charged forward and tried to punch Kota, only for the vigilante to seemingly vanish. Huh? Too slow. Death Arms turned around and saw Kota standing behind him, with his fingers raised. Before the hero could react, Kota flicked the villain in the forehead, sending him flying a few feet back, landing on his butt. Jeeger. Death Arms took a moment to recover. There was blood leaking down from where Kota had flicked him, and he was absolutely pissed. Kota taunted the hero, motioning for him to come at him. Death Arms got up and ran at Kota, but before he could get close, a bolt of lightning struck the floor right in front of him, forcing the hero to stop in his track and look up at Izuku, who had slung the lightning. "That's enough," Izuku said, with a seriously upset expression on his face. "Tch, I was just messing around." Kota crossed his arms in an annoyed manner. "You're embarrassing someone," Izuku told him. "And we can't waste our time anyway. Remember?" Kota scowled because he knew Izuku was right. They couldn't use their powers all day, and wasting it like this, even if it was fun, was wasteful. Fine. The blue champion took to the sky, and in a blur, he was gone. "Hey, come back here!" Death Arms shouted at the empty sky. "Sorry about him." Izuku quickly apologized, before following his friend. Sorry," Eri said quietly, before also following the two. A few days later. "The prisoner has escaped. The prisoner has escaped." "Ah!" shouted a policeman, right before his arm was cut off by an elongated tooth blade. On the bridge of Tartarus in the dead of night, a convoy transporting the dangerous criminal Moonfish was under siege by that exact same villain. Whoever had been in charge of securing the muzzle on the villain had done a terrible job, and after the truck he was in hit a slight bump, it became loose enough for Moonfish to use his quirk to free himself and start attacking the guards. 2 guards had been killed and many others had been injured, with one losing an arm. The men did their best, shooting at him in an attempt to take him down, but the villain defended himself by using his teeth as a shield. Flesh. Moonfish sent out one of his teeth, and it shot right towards one of the guards' chest. And right as it was about to impale that guard, crack! It suddenly broke against the chest of Izuku, who had flown in between the guard and the attack. Before Moonfish could do anything else, he was zapped by lighting from above, courtesy of Kota. After a few moments, Kota ended his attack, and Moonfish fell onto the van, knocked out. Done. Kota turned his attention towards the guards. Freeze! Some of the guards aimed their weapons at Izuku and Kota, as well as Eri who was flying behind Kota. While some other guards took to trying to attend to their injured. "Are you kidding me?" Kota asked, disgusted that they would prioritize trying to arrest them, after they just saved their lives, over helping the injured. "One of you is missing an arm. No time to waste, let's get them to a hospital." Izuku quickly scooped up the guard missing his arm and flew as fast as he could to the nearest hospital. The other 2 followed his example and picked up as many injured as they could and flew them over to the hospital. A week later, at a beach. "Ah! Help me!" shouted a child, as he flailed around in the water, trying not to drown. "Ah! My baby!" shouted the mother of the child back on the shore. "Someone help him!" Swoosh! Before anyone could do anything, a blue blur sped past them, right at the child. The blur swooped past the child, and the child disappeared, before reappearing in his mother's arms. "Ah! My baby!" The mother quickly got over her shock and hugged her son. "You're welcome," said Kota as he flew above all the beachgoers. "Get out of here!" shouted one woman. "What?" Kota shouted in shock. "I just dash. Dirty vigilante. You're no better than the villains," shouted a man. Kota glared at the beachgoers, who continued to shout things at him, before finally taking his leave. A week and a half later. Eri looked at the remains of a recently collapsed building. This building had been the victim of a villain attack and had been heavily populated up until a few moments ago. Fortunately, while Izuku and Kota took care of the villain, she rescued the dozens of people inside the buildings. Eri didn't like fighting all that much, so she would typically leave that up to Izuku and Kota if she could help it, while she would rescue the people. As Eri was standing looking at the ruins of what once was people's homes, the press ran up behind her, with their cameras and microphones. "Marvel Aka! Over here!" Eri turned around and was immediately overwhelmed, as the press swarmed her, surrounding her completely and shoving cameras and microphones in her face. "Marvel Aka, why did you become a vigilante? Is it because you don't respect the law or pro-heroes?" What? And no. Eri answered quietly, trying to back away only to bump into another reporter. "Where did you and your siblings get your powers? Are you using quirk-enhancing drugs?" Eri, despite having the speed of Mercury, couldn't answer the questions faster than they were being asked. "Why do you and your siblings look nothing alike? Did your mother or father have multiple affairs?" Huh? Eri didn't even know what that meant, but all this overwhelming attention was starting to cause her to tear up. "Do you know how irresponsible your actions are? Or do you not care?" As the reporters kept asking questions, and Eri started to cry. Crockum. Large bolts of lightning stuck all around the reports, causing them to stop and cower in fear, and looking up they could see a very upset Kota and Izuku, with lightning brimming from their eyes. Get away from her. Now. Kota said, the words or else unsaid, but implied. Quickly the press dispersed, and Eri flew into the air next to the two of them. Scum. Couldn't they see she was crying? Kota muttered to himself, trying to make sure the other two couldn't hear him. Are you okay, Eri? Izuku asked her. Eri sniffed, and tried to wipe the tears out of her eyes. I'm sorry. Izuku was about to tell her not to apologize, but Kota spoke first. Why didn't you just fly away? Kota asked her. Eri didn't know how to say she got overwhelmed. Ko-aoi. Izuku glared at his friend for his insensitivity. TCH. Kota didn't say another word, and instead, he just flew away. 2 weeks later. Crockum. Ikai City was on fire. Abnormally powerful bolts of lightning had been striking the city, courtesy of the villain 9. While their leader sent down his fury from above, his subordinates, Slice, Mummy, and Chimera, wreaked havoc on the ground. This city will be a statement. A claim to my rule. 9 said as he stood on top of a building. Well, that rule's not gonna last very long, I'll tell you that. 9's eyes widened, and he quickly turned around to see Kota casually standing behind him. A marvel. 9 instantly recognized him. I suppose you've come to stop me? You should be joining me. You have incredible power, and yet you use it for minor tasks and party tricks. You could rule with that power. You and your siblings. You should gah. Before 9 could finish talking, Kota punched him in the gut, making the villain spit out blood all over Kota's arm before passing out from the force. Gross. Kota shook all the blood off his arm. Why do villains always have to give such long speeches? It's so annoying. Meanwhile, on the ground people were running away from the combined force of Slice and Mummy. Slice shot out pieces of her hair at buildings, causing massive destruction around her, while Mummy wrapped whatever he could find up in his bandages. Cars, vending machines, and other things became puppets that would terrorize the people. One man was running away from one of Mummy's puppets when he tripped over a rock. Ah! The man screamed as the puppet came upon him, ready to attack. Zap! A bolt of lightning came flying, hitting the puppet so hard it pierced it, and went right through its body, causing it to explode. Huh? Mummy and Slice stopped their attack and looked where the lightning came from and saw Eri flying towards them. Aki. Eri grated. See, could you stop attacking the city, please? The two villains looked at each other for a moment as if asking, is she serious, before turning back to Eri, and attacking her. Slice shot out sharpened strands of her hair at her, but this only served to irritate Eri as the strands bounced off her skin. Ow! Please stop. Eri raised her hands over her face to defend herself and shot some lightning down at Slice. The villain couldn't defend herself in time and was hit dead center. Ah! She flew back, into a car which caved in from the force of impact. Slice. Mummy looked at his teammate and saw she was unconscious, before looking back at Eri. I'm sorry, please surrender. Eri pleaded. Never. Mummy shouted with indignation. Before getting blasted by a bolt of lightning into unconsciousness. Sorry. Eri apologized to no one in particular. Meanwhile, in another part of the city, Chimera breathed fire on a car, causing it to explode. So you have super strength, durability, and you can breathe fire. Chimera stopped rampaging for a moment, and looked up, to see Izuku flying down towards him, eventually meeting him at eye level a few feet away. Why is it that so many villains have cool quirks? Izuku asked his foe. 'Cause not everyone thinks our quirks are cool. Chimera barked back. I'm what most people would call a monster. And dash. An abomination that should have never been born. Izuku finished the villain's sentence, much to Chimera's surprise. I see, you were hurt and blamed for something that was never your fault. Betrayed by people you thought you could trust. I understand. Izuku's tone took a somber tone, as pain flashed in his eyes, telling Chimera that he wasn't lying. So then you should join us. You don't owe them anything. The strong should rule over the weak. Chimera preached. Izuku shook his head and sighed. Being hurt doesn't mean you can hurt people. It's not right. It's not right that they call me a monster even when I haven't done a thing. Who cares about what's right? It's an unfair world, and we have the power to make it ours. Chimera argued. Just because you can, doesn't mean you should. Izuku looked at Chimera somberly. I'm sorry for what you've been through, but if you don't stop, I will take you down. Grr. Try it. Chimera was done talking, and let out a fire breath attack directly at Izuku. Izuku took the attack, not being affected by it in the slightest. The green vigilante charged through the flames at irreversible speeds, stopping right in front of Chimera, before giving his chest a hard shove with his palm. Chimera was sent flying back, blood leaking from his maw as he flew through the air, eventually landing half a mile away from where Izuku and shoved him, completely unconscious. Izuku sighed. What a waste. As Izuku lamented the waste of such a cool and powerful quirk, Kota and Eri flew down beside him. Are we done here? Kota asked impatiently. We should be, Izuku said. He looked to Eri to see if she was ready to leave, and he noticed that she was staring at something behind them. What are you looking at? Eri didn't look at him, and wore an unsure and slightly scared expression on her face as she said, Why do they look so scared? Izuku and Kota looked closer at the direction Eri was staring at, and they could see people hiding from them. Why are they hiding? Eri asked her two friends. Izuku sighed. Because we're vigilantes. We're technically criminals. Even if we did just save their whole stinkin' city, Kota growled bitterly, before turning away. Come on, we're done wasting our time with these cowards. Kota flew away, but Eri and Izuku stayed behind, looking at the terrified people they just saved. Are we doing the right thing? Eri turned to Izuku and asked. Of course, Izuku answered with little hesitation. If we didn't help, then a lot of people would have died. Eri didn't respond. But the feeling of unease remained with her. The tension was thick in the police briefing room, as the heroes who sat there were very high profile. Hawks. Best Jeanist. Crust. Eraserhead. Nizu. Mirko. Kamui Woods. Death Arms. Ryukyu. Fat Gum. And even Endeavor. After seeing the other heroes around them, the pros knew exactly what they were here for. The Marvels. They all knew that they'd have to deal with them sooner than later. Not that most of the heroes here were looking forward to it. Instead of a member of the police, the one leading the briefing was Sir Night-Eye. Which made sense, seeing as the Marvel's debut was in getting rid of villains he had been trying to apprehend for years. Now, I'm sure you've all ascertained the reason as to why we've called you, Night-Eye said while pushing up his glasses. Mirko was the first to answer. Yeah. To take care of those flying assholes who think they can do whatever they want. Hey now. There's no need to use such harsh language. The Marvels have done some incredible things. Even if it's on the wrong side of the law. Crust didn't hate the Marvels and actually appreciated a lot of what they did. It saddened him knowing they would have to take them in. They're vigilantes. What they've done beyond that is irrelevant. Endeavor spoke up. Our job is to take them in, as simple as that. While I don't think it's going to be anything resembling simple, Endeavor is right. Night-Eye pulled a remote from his pocket and pressed a button, and a projector shot an image of the Marvels onto the wall in front of everyone. To go over the basics, the Marvels are a 3-person vigilante team consisting of 2 males and 1 female. Marvel Midori, Marvel Aoi, and Marvel Aka. Night-Eye pressed another button, and the image switched to them fighting Overhaul in his monster form. They first appeared fighting Kai Chisaki after he presumably used his quirk to turn himself into this monster. Presumably, they had been fighting the Yakuza for quite some time inside the building, as some lightning bolts had been spotted striking the area by some nearby civilians. Although strangely, not only did the lightning bolts appear out of the clear sky and do no damage to the areas they touched, but also people more than a mile away claimed to have neither heard nor seen any lightning. Do you think it was some kind of proximity-based illusion? Aizawa asked. That's the only thing I can think of. That makes sense, but why? Nizu asked in return. They've shown the ability to shoot very real lightning, so why would they create fake lighting? We've also never seen them display any other illusion-based abilities in the past. Maybe we have and we just didn't know. Hawks half-joked. Ugh, fucking great. Just what those guys need, fucking illusions. Mirko complained. Putting that aside for the moment, the abilities we know the Marvels to have are superhuman strength, speed, durability, and reflexes. As well as the ability to fly and shoot blasts of electricity, Night-Eye stated, switching through slides that showed the Marvels using their powers. They also may have the ability to teleport. Although this was only seen in their battle against Overhaul. Night-Eye showed a video that was obviously taken on someone's phone, of a very, very far away Kota about to finish off Overhaul, only to get struck by lightning and seemingly disappear. Then it showed Eri after defeating Overhaul, flying in the air only to get struck by lightning and disappear. I'm not sure what that was. Nizu spoke his thoughts, gaining everyone's attention. Looking at it at a first glance, one could think that the marvels had teleported away, however with context that theory falls apart. Firstly, why would Aoi choose to teleport away, at that moment? He was clearly about to use a powerful attack on Overhaul and no reason to leave the battle. Marvel Aka makes more sense, as the battle was over and they would have left afterward. However, why would Marvel Midori not do the same thing? And of course, the biggest question of all, if they could teleport, why not do it more often? If this is teleportation, then I don't think that the Marvels were the ones controlling it. Or more likely, Night Eye, do you have the full video of this encounter? Of course, Night Eye responded. Then could you go to the part where Marvel Aoi disappeared? Nizu asked. Night Eye gave a quick nod and then did just that. After a few moments, the video played, showing Aoi disappearing, and then Midori flying towards where Aoi had been and then leaving the fight. There. You can see Marvel Midori quickly flying to Aoi's location, and then leaving. Nizu pointed out. Why? Oh, will you stop stringing us along and tell us what the hell you're thinking? Mirko shouted, entirely too impatient for Nizu's games. I was getting to that. Very soon after this happened, Marvel Aka stopped evacuating civilians, and then when the Marvels reappeared in the fight, aka unleashed her unknown attack on Overhaul and ended the fight. Nizu continued to set up his theory. Please fast forward to that, please. Night Eye fast forwarded to aka killing Overhaul and then getting struck by lightning and disappearing, and then showing Midori zipping over to her location, back down to where they'd come from, and then flying off away from the scene. And there's Midori's strange flight pattern. Instead of flying away from the scene of the fight instantly, he goes to AKA's location and then goes back to where they had flown out of, and then he flies away. Nizu pointed out. Sir Night Eye. Has there been any news of the Marvels mentioning some kind of power or time limit? There have been reports of Marvel Midori saying things like, we don't have time for this, we can't waste time on this, don't waste your power like this, as well as other things of this nature to Marvel Aoi when he starts to mess around. Of course, it could be shrugged off as him not wishing to waste time, but the serious nature in which he says this implies it's more of a warning. Night Eye explained. The heroes perked up. A weakness? For the invincible Marvel. Fucking great. Death Arms celebrated. A potential weakness, it's only a theory. Nizu reminded them. And speaking of theories, I have one of my own. You see, judging by the evidence put in front of us, I theorize that the Marvel's quirks are transformation quirks. Transformation quirks? Fat Gum repeated. You mean that what we see is only a powered-up state of theirs? That would make sense. None of them wear a mask, and yet we have been completely unable to figure out their identities. Endeavor added. And I think I see where Nizu was going with this, Ryukyu said. When Marvel Aoi and aka were struck by lightning, they weren't disappearing, they just became harder to see. It's possible outside of their transformations they could be significantly smaller, and at that range and at night, it would be practically impossible to see them. And once they had been forced out of their transformations, Marvel Midori had to go and catch them, and then bring them away from the fight. Which explains their actions. It would also explain why they used that unknown attack and killed Overhaul, Aizawa added. The Marvels have been very careful not to kill anyone since this incident, so why now? And why would they use this unknown attack only this one time? The answer is because they were desperate. They were running low on either time or power, so Marvel Aka used her most powerful ability to end the fight before they all were forced out of their transformations. Murmurs rang among the pros as they seemed to agree on this theory altogether. But that leaves the question, is this a time limit or a power depletion limit? Genist asked. While I don't think we have enough evidence to say anything definitively, I would say it's more likely a power limit, Nizu said. The times in which the Marvels are active seem to be very inconsistent, and Marvel Midori tends to be more active than the other two, so it's possible that he is the best out of the three at conserving his energy, and what we've seen of the trio supports this. So it's possible that they have a limited amount of energy they can use before they transform back into a less powerful, if not completely powerless state. Night Eye laid out all the threads together, making it into one solid theory. We'll have to keep that in mind. Do you have any more theories, Nizu? Not at the moment, no. Nizu shook his head. Then let us move on, Night Eye said, getting slides back to where he wanted them to be. Now, the last ability of theirs you need to look out for is the most dangerous one, as well as the most unknown. And that is the power aka used on Overhaul to end the fight. The video of aka flying to Overhaul, there being a bright flash of light, and then Overhaul, a monster the size of a skyscraper, was gone without a trace. Lesser heroes would find this terrifying. These heroes just found it intimidating. We have no clue what happened here. At all. When we went to instigate the scene, there was absolutely nothing left of Overhaul. Nothing. He just vanished without a trace. Night Eye tried his hardest to emphasize both how mysterious and dangerous this ability was, and it seemed to have worked, as some of the heroes looked slightly unnerved. As of now, we have 5 theories about how this could have been accomplished. 2 unlikely ones and 3 more likely ones. So all we can do is theorize about this, whatever it is, it's extremely dangerous. Aizawa concluded. Starting with the 2 unlikely ones first is that it was all an illusion and the Marvels were attempting to trick people into thinking positively of them by fighting a fake monster. Given that Kai Chisaki was a real person who is currently missing, presumed dead, and that the destruction caused by Chisaki was very real, and that the Marvels have shown they are willing and capable of saving people from villains, this is unlikely. Night Eye said. The second unlikely theory is that they do in fact have a teleportation ability, and simply teleported Chisaki away. However, unless she teleported him very far away, then Chisaki definitely would have been noticed given his size. And of course, this theory would also bring up another question, that being, why wouldn't they do that more often? Okay, mind telling us the theories that might actually be true? Mirko asked impatiently. I was getting to that. The first more plausible theory is that she has the ability to manipulate matter. And the reason Chisaki disappeared into thin air is because he was turned into thin air. Night Eye explained. It's possible aka may not have full control over this ability, as therefore prefers not to use it unless it's an emergency. So basically it would pressure them hard enough they might turn us all into fucking air. Death Arms could feel his frustration growing. What's worse is the possible lack of control of something like that. Powerful quirks plus lack of control never ends well. Eraserhead pointed out. Well, the theories don't get much more comforting from here. The last 2 theories both involve a form of chronokinesis. The first of the 2 is that she actually teleported him through time, either to the distant past or the future. The second is that rather than sending Overhaul through time, she sent time through Overhaul. In other words, she rewound Overhaul's body back to the point when he didn't exist or was a sperm cell. Night Eye explained. You're right, it didn't get any more comforting. Fat Gum was confident his fat could take a lot of things. Getting erased from existence was not one of them. Oh yeah, great. But the better question here isn't what it is, it's how do we dodge it? Hawks asked. Because I don't know about the rest of you, but I would really like to not be insta-killed if they feel like they're in danger. Well, as stated, we have no real idea of what this attack is. So given our current knowledge, we have 2 methods of avoiding this attack. 1, don't let them use it, and 2, don't fight them. Night Eye suggested. We suggest the latter. Endeavor gave Night Eye a scathing glare. Are you suggesting that we simply let them do as they please without arresting them? What we are suggesting is that you all sit back and let All Might handle this. Night Eye didn't need to see the future to know that this statement would cause more than a little outrage. Mirko and Death Arms looked like he had just personally insulted them. However, before anyone could complain, Nizu spoke up. That would be for the best. Several glares, confused looks, and eyebrow raises were thrown Nizu's way. The mouse-slash-bear principal quickly explained himself. I've been looking into the Marvels since they arrived. I've been meticulous in calculating the limits of their abilities, and their overall versatility, and I can confidently say that no single hero other than All Might could beat all 3 of them. Even fighting just one of them, it's unlikely that even Endeavor could win, and that's assuming they actually stay and fight, instead of just flying away. Nizu explained. And even if every high-ranking hero, aside from All Might, teamed up to fight the 3, it still would not guarantee victory, and the sheer amount of property damage and casualties of both heroes and civilians is enough for us to say, it's not worth it. They're not causing enough of a problem for us to justify throwing an army of heroes and destroying the city to take them in, especially when we don't know for sure if that would work. Let us take a look back at how well you've performed against the Marvels at this point, Night Eye said as he pressed another button on his remote. The projection changed to a video of a boy running into the street, about to get hit by a car, only to get saved by Eri, flying in and swooping up the kid, and bringing him back to the sidewalk. Eri quickly tried to fly away, but she didn't get more than a few feet away when Ryukyu swooped down in her dragon form and slammed her to the ground with her massive claws. However, Eri was only trapped in the dragon hero's claw for a few seconds, before she immediately burst out, flying out of her clutches and away from the dragoness so fast that she could never hope to catch up. Ryukyu gave an embarrassed blush at the sight of her failure being projected for everyone to see. The next video was another one of Eri. This time she had just finished zapping a villain into unconsciousness and was flying over his body. She was then kicked away by an arriving Mirko. This actually seemed to do some small damage to Eri, as she was knocked across the street. Mirko jumped over Eri and was about to land an axe kick on her while she was down when she was suddenly blasted with lightning by a very pissed-off Kota. Mirko went flying back and crashed into a car, giving the two marvels a chance to escape. Mirko grit his teeth and growled at the video. Another video played, showing Death Arms getting taken on a stretcher after his first encounter with the marvels. And then another video of Kota playing around with him before flicking him away. Death Arms crushed an apple he was eating as the pure embarrassment he suffered was displayed. A few more videos played showing various heroes in the room getting absolutely humiliated by Eri and Kota, although strangely enough, Izuku didn't appear in any of the videos. After a few minutes, Night Eye pressed another button and the video stopped. So as you can see, none of you stand any actual chance of stopping them. Out of everyone in this room, only about 3 of you are even capable of doing any significant damage to them. What about Eraserhead and Genist? Can't they do anything? Hawks asked. I've already tried using my quirk on them. It doesn't work. Eraserhead answered curtly. The same goes for me. Whatever those outfits are made of, it isn't any sort of fiber. Best Genist revealed. Wait, if they aren't fibers then what the heck is it? Fat Gum asked, genuinely curious. We don't know, and we have bigger things to worry about than what their outfits are made of. Night Eye dismissed. What we've brought you here to tell you is that you shouldn't engage the marvels, for the time being. Unless we can discover something useful that we could use against them. So we're just supposed to do nothing? Kemui Woods asked. Not necessarily. If my theory is correct, then if we could discover their identities, we could capture them before they get the chance to transform. Nizu told them. Meaning that as of right now, everyone's only priority in terms of the marvels should be finding out their identities. A few heroes, namely Mirko, Death Arms, and Endeavor, seemed very unhappy with this news, but others were more understanding. Do we have any clues? Lead? Anything? Crust asked. Surely we must have something? Not much. Night Eye sighed. As I've said, we've been unable to successfully identify them using facial recognition, however we did get something out of it. Night Eye pressed another button, and it switched a picture of 2 people. One being Kota in his champion form, and another being his father, Hosu Izumi. Both of them looked basically identical. The person on the left is Marvel Aoi, and the person on the right is Hosu Izumi, a member of the former hero duo, Water Hose. Night Eye explained. I'm guessing you noticed a resemblance? Mirko slammed her fist down on a table and held an outraged expression as she pointed at the projection. Wait one fucking minute. So you mean we did find out who he was? And he was a fucking hero this whole time? Obviously not if he said we haven't been able to identify them. Aizawa pointed out. Yes, seeing as Hosu Izumi is dead along with his wife, Night Eye explained. Both were killed by the villain Muscular, while they helped civilians evacuate the area. May they rest in peace. Crush said quietly. Did they have a kid or something? A brother? Fat Gum asked. They did have a son. Kota Izumi. Night Eye pressed a button, and the projection now showed Kota, although he was much younger as the picture was taken before he ran away. However, it's unlikely to be him, as he would be around 7 right now, and is also most likely dead. That caused some alarm amongst the heroes. What do you mean, most likely dead? Kemui asked. Kota Izumi, after the death of his parents, was given to the only remaining family we know of, the cousin of Misu Izumi, Shino Sosaki, also known as the hero Mandalay, of the Wild Wild Pussy Cats. However, after only staying with them a few months, he ran away. Night Eye explained. Given that this was a few years ago and he hasn't been seen since, it's a fairly safe assumption that he died on the streets. Crust sniffled and let out a tear for the poor boy. First the parents, and then the son. That poor family. So it's just a coincidence? Aizawa asked. Perhaps, however, what's keeping me from writing this off as a mere coincidence, is the fact that Aoi has been asking about the villain, Muscular, Night Eye explained, before showing another video. Kota stood over a villain who had been knocked to the ground, looming over him threateningly with his hands glowing with electricity. Where is Muscular? Who? The villain asked, fearing for his life. The video cut off, but it was safe to assume nothing pleasant happened to that villain. From this, we can indicate that there is most likely some connection between Marvel Aoi and Hosu Izumi, Night Eye explained. Although we don't know what that connection is. It's possible he's a secret brother of his, although we don't know why he would be a secret. Not to mention we would also have to explain his quirk, which is unlike anything in the Izumi family, as well as it being shared by two people, who look nothing like Hosu or anyone in the known Izumi family. Do we have anything on Midori or aka? Aizawa asked. No, those two we have nothing on. All we have about those two are guesses. Night Eye said. Humph. Endeavor got up, and without any explanation, started walking to the door. And where exactly do you think you're going? Night Eye asked. This is a waste of time. Endeavor stated simply. If the point of this was to tell us not to engage the Marvels, you could have done that in a few seconds. And figuring out their identities is pointless. And how so? Eraserhead asked. Because we'll figure it out when All Might takes them in. Endeavor answered. If All Might is being sent to capture them, then there's no point in us getting involved. I see, and what if All Might fails to capture them? Nizu asked. Once again, many puzzled looks were thrown Nizu's way, as if the heroes were concerned that he'd lost his mind. Nizu simply shook his head. All Might can't fix all our problems. He's human, just as we are, and as such he is subject to human error. The Marvels are unlike any vigilantes we've seen before, it would be foolish of us to underestimate them. There were a few moments of silence, as Nizu let that information sink in. Bah! All this talk All Might and he's not even here. Mirko pointed out. Where the hell is he? Meanwhile, with All Might, Toshinori Yagi walked through the police station, in his true, skinny form, holding 2 cups of coffee. He walked over to an office he was more than familiar with and knocked on the door. Come, said the voice of Detective Naomasa. All Might pushed the door open, and walked into Naomasa's office, and saw the man himself looking up at him from his desk. Ah, Toshinori, you're here. And you brought coffee. Naomasa said with a smile on his face. Of course, I know how tiresome detective work can be after all. All Might took his seat across from Naomasa and handed his friend the second coffee. The two took long sips of their drinks, before coming back up for air. And with that out of way, it was time to get to business. I'm assuming you know why I called you here? Naomasa asked, leaning down to pull something out of his desk. It's about the Marvels, right? All Might asked. Sorry, I haven't been able to capture them yet. I just haven't run into them during my patrols and well, I can't much after my patrols. I'm aware. And I don't think that's a coincidence. Naomasa told his friend. Looking at the times Midori and the other Marvels have been active, they've only ever been active after your patrols have ended. All Might's sunken eyes widened. You don't think they know about my time limit, do you? Maybe, while I think it's unlikely that it's a coincidence, it's possible that they've just taken notice of the fact that you're only active for a certain amount of time per day, Naomasa explained. However, it is still possible they know about your time limit. And if that's the case, given their quirk or quirks, I think you know who might be involved. All for one. All Might didn't like to even think that that villain could still be alive. But he couldn't deny the possibility after seeing the power the Marvels displayed. Right now we have 2 theories that connect All for One and the Marvels, Naomasa explained. The first one is that they work for All for One, and they act as vigilantes to decrease people's faith in heroes and cause chaos. Or, they were small-time vigilantes that All for One gave power to but doesn't have full control of. Again, this would most likely be done to decrease people's faith in heroes and cause chaos. So either they're pawns of All for One, or unknowing pawns of All for One. All Might summarized. I'd like to think it's the latter, or neither. Well, those are the only 2 theories we have right now on the origin of their power. If All for One isn't behind it, then there is someone very dangerous behind the scenes that we don't know about. Naomasa honestly didn't know which one was scarier. All for One, or a completely unknown enemy that could bestow power of this level on people. But regardless, we need you to bring them in. Meaning we'll need you to conserve your power until they make an appearance. All Might nodded. Hopefully won't take too long. People would notice if I didn't go on my patrols for a while. Well, if they really are avoiding you, then it might take longer than we'd like. Naomasa speculated. But let's just hope that's not the case. Right. All Might took another sip of his coffee. All Might knew what he needed to do. Even putting aside the fact that they were vigilantes, their possible connection to All for One was enough reason for All Might to prioritize taking them down. But they'd find out soon enough if they had any connection to that man. Things had been rather dull for once. What would normally happen is that Eri and Kota would wait for Izuku to tell them when they would go on patrol. Izuku stressed the importance of this because Izuku had spent a lot of time figuring out when heroes like Endeavor and All Might went on patrol, and where they went on patrol, so they knew how to avoid them. However, All Might hadn't been patrolling, and as such, Izuku hadn't been patrolling, which meant he, Eri, and Kota had just been staying put. Which, overall, Eri was fine with, but Kota was definitely not. The three of them were currently sitting on the sofa, with their eyes glued to the TV as it played the news. Another day with no sight of the symbol of peace. All Might hasn't been seen for the past 3 days, which is very abnormal for the symbol of peace, although it is possible that he is simply taking a well-deserved break. The newswoman reported. Izuku gave the TV a frustrated pout. I don't understand. All Might doesn't really take breaks like this. At least not unannounced. Maybe he just got tired? Eri suggested. Nuh. All Might never get tired. Izuku argued. There has to be some kind of reason. Grrrrrrrrr, Kota growled in annoyance. Speaking of disappearances, the Marvels have also not been seen for the last 3 days. Normally at least Marvel Midori shows up a few times a day, but all 3 of the Marvels have been unseen for the last 3 days. The newswoman reported. It seems that even they have been spooked by the prospect of All Might popping out at any time. As they should. The symbol of peace would never allow these agents of chaos to dash. Pume. Kota had snatched the remote from Izuku and turned the TV off. Agents of chaos? We've been saving people, non-stop, and this is the thanks we get. Kota shouted, throwing the remote away, before glaring at Izuku. And why the hell are we just staying here? We should be out there. Kicking villain ass and looking for muscular. Izuku sighed. First. Language. Second, we need to wait until All Might finishes his patrol. All Might is almost never active after his patrol. All Might's patrols last somewhere between 2.5 and 3 hours. If we want to avoid having to fight him, then we have to wait until after then. How does work? If All Might wanted to fight us after his patrol, then he'd just do it. Kota pointed out. It's not like he has a time limit. Izuku frowned and pulled out a notebook. All Might is never active after his patrols. Never. I don't know why, but it's the truth. Why do you think he never stepped in to fight all the villains we took down? Or to take us down? It's because it was after his patrol. Although, weirdly, All Might used to step in all the time. At all times of the day. If he saw trouble, he would step in. But then he stopped being active after his patrols, and as time went on, his patrols got shorter and shorter. Maybe he's just getting old? Kota suggested sarcastically while rolling his eyes at Izuku's blatant hero worship. No. All Might looks, well, he doesn't look as young as he used to, but he still looks really young. Izuku defended his hero as if he had taken personal offense to Kota's suggestion. And he's still super strong. Probably not as strong as us. Kotaskout et Izuku. And why are we even avoiding him? We're strong. And there are 3 of us. I bet we could kick his ass. Kota, it's All Might. All Might. The symbol of peace. The man who lowered the crime rate of Japan to a single digit. We wouldn't stand a chance. Izuku argued, looking at Kota as if he'd gone mad. You don't know that. Just because you're a year older than me, doesn't mean you're smarter. Kota was actually shouting at Izuku now, making Eri flinched as she sunk into the couch. Why do you want to go out so badly? You keep saying that what we're doing is lame and that people don't like us, so why do you want to keep doing it? Izuku wasn't shouting, but he had definitely raised his voice to a level that made Eri uncomfortable. Because we're supposed to be finding muscular, and we haven't found any clues. Kota shouted. His fist was balled up, and he was now unleashing anger and frustration that had been building up for a long, long time. None of the villains we fought knew anything about him. All of it was just a waste of time. Kota, we saved lives. Izuku pointed out. And they hate us for it. Kota argued. Tears were begging to appear in the corner of Eri's eyes. She hated when Kota and Izuku butted heads, but this was worse than anything that had happened before. She wanted to stop it, say something, do something. But she was afraid. What if when she spoke up, all that anger directed towards her? And so she just sat there, curling up into a ball and hoping that the yelling would stop soon. It's not about being liked, Kota. It's about helping people. Izuku continued to argue. No. To you it's about helping people. No one else here cares about that hero crap. Stop wrapping us up in your stupid dream. Kota shouted, his face red from anger. In fact, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. I don't need to be a stupid hero. And I don't need you. With that, Kota hopped off the couch and ran for the door, kicking it open and running away. Shazam! Izuku and Eri heard Kota shout from the hallway, followed by a lightning strike and the sound of winds kicking up as Kota presumably flew away. Wait! Eri was about to chase after him, but she was stopped by Izuku, who put his hand on her shoulder. Don't. He just needs time to cool down. He'll come back. Izuku reassured her. This isn't the first time this has happened. Eri gave Izuku a confused and unsure look. Part of her wanted to go and catch Kota right now, and beg him not to leave, but on top of knowing that he was probably long gone by now, she also trusted that what Izuku said was true. After all, he never lied to her before. But one thing was still bothering her. This has happened before? Eri asked him. Izuku nodded solemnly and sighed. Me and Kota, we met a while ago. He was trying to steal money from some lady's purse while she wasn't looking, and I stopped him and showed him he could have just begged for it instead. The lady pitied us and gave us some money so we could buy food. After that, we just stayed together. But we don't agree about a lot of stuff. Heroes especially. We'd argue and he'd get mad and leave. But we'd always end up back together eventually, and we'd forgive each other. I don't know why. Maybe it's because it's lonely? Eri suggested. She knew how painful it was to be alone. Stuck for years by herself in Overhaul's lair, she would have done anything for some company that didn't hate, at least. Izuku looked at Eri with a thoughtful expression. Maybe you're right. But, Eri, do you think Kota was right? Am I forcing my dream on you? What do you mean? Eri was confused. So far neither Kota nor Izuku had ever forced her to do something. At least not like Overhaul did. Do you not want to keep doing this? Going around saving people? Izuku asked her seriously. Eri was scared to answer that. Part of her just wanted to lie and say no, in fear of disappointing Izuku. But the look in his eye, it told her that that would be a mistake. I don't know. I like helping people. It feels good. But they say such mean things about us. I don't understand why. If we're helping people, why do they hate us? Aren't we doing a good thing? Why is being a vigilante illegal? Now it was Izuku's turn to think about his answer. And trust that he'd thought long and hard about that. He'd even done it in his transformed state to see if the wisdom of Solomon could help him out. He'd read books about it at the library, and studied about it on the computers, again at the library. Vigilantes can sometimes be good, but also bad, Izuku explained. The reason why they're illegal is because they're mostly untrained, and so they don't know the best way to stop villains or save people, without hurting anyone else. Izuku searched his memories for an example, to simplify his explanation. One time, there was a vigilante called the Man of Steel, who had a powerful strength-enhancing quirk. He tried to save a bunch of people by fighting some villains that were attacking, but since he had no training, he ended up destroying half the city and killed hundreds of people during the fight. And later he was killed because he made a stupid mistake. And another vigilante could grow to the size of a building, and he ended up hurting a lot more people than the villain. Incidents like that were extremely common back when vigilantes had been more prominent. No one was born knowing how to use their quirks, and without taking the time to learn and be taught how to properly utilize your abilities, the casualties that came from widespread vigilantism numbered in the hundreds of thousands and was the main reason for the modern-day hatred of vigilantes. Some vigilantes were good. They helped out a lot and saved a lot of people, but even they made mistakes that did a lot of damage to people and the things around them. Izuku continued. Have we hurt people? Eri knew that their powers were dangerous, and when she thought about it, it was strange she didn't remember accidentally blowing up a building with a lightning bolt or flying to a person at super speeds and killing them, or flown into a plane. Izuku shook his head. We have a cheat. You know how sometimes you feel like you should do something or that you shouldn't do something. Like if you want to throw a lightning bolt somewhere but you don't because you suddenly know that it'll hurt someone or destroy something. And you don't know how you know that? Eri nodded. She'd gotten that feeling a lot, but she hadn't thought about it too much. That's the wisdom of Solomon. Probably. Izuku didn't have definitive proof that that ability was the wisdom of Solomon, but it made sense for it to be. That's what keeps us from being like those bad vigilantes, and destroying stuff and killing people. It even helps us hold back against people so we don't kill them. So, we're good? Eri was a little confused, but overall she somewhat managed to grasp what Izuku was trying to say. Yeah, but they don't know we have that, Izuku explained. And they killed Overhaul. He didn't want to say it. But they were all responsible for murder. Not even accidental murder. But he couldn't say that. Not to Eri. So, because they don't know we won't hurt people, they're afraid of us? Things started to make a bit more sense to her. If vigilantes had accidentally caused all that damage in the past, and they were way more powerful than those vigilantes, she'd be afraid too if she was them. But why don't we just tell them about the wisdom of Solomon? Izuku shook his head. Because they wouldn't believe us. Adults don't really believe in magic, so if we told us we had a magic power that kept us from hurting people by accident, then it'd sound like a lie. That made sense to Eri. It sounded just too convenient. And she'd learned that if something was too good to be true, it most likely wasn't true. And even if they did, we've already broken a bunch of other laws. Like hurting pro-heroes. Izuku once again left out the murder part. So even if we weren't vigilantes, people still wouldn't like us. Eri frowned. Izuku's explanation had cleared a few things that she'd been confused about, but it left her feeling kind of at a loss. Even if they stopped, they would still be wanted. They'd never be able to go anywhere in their adult forms, without attracting police and the heroes. Do you regret it? Izuku asked her with a saddened look. Regret what? Eri asked. Do you remember back when we were in your old room, and we asked you if you wanted to come with us or run away? Izuku reminded her. Do you regret not running away? No, Eri answered so quickly it surprised not only Izuku but herself as well. If I ran away, I would be alone. You two are the only people who were nice to me. You saved me when no one else would. I don't want to leave you both. Not ever. And if I left, could you have beat Overhaul? I don't know. Izuku answered truthfully, his fist clenched over his little knees as he wore a troubled expression. Maybe I could have used enough lightning to kill him, but if that failed, then they would have died. I don't regret it at all, even if I did have to do something terrible. Eri, despite how much pain Overhaul had caused her, still couldn't find it in her to fully move past his death. The fact that she'd once again killed a person, this time knowingly, was something she had a tough time coming to grips with. Her only solace being that she did it to protect Izuku and Kota. Kota and Izuku had meant so much to her back then, and even more to her now. Flashback, some time ago. Eri and Kota were alone in the ruined mansion since Izuku had gone out to be a vigilante. Kota was at a small table he had brought writing stuff down, while Eri was just peeking at him from the couch. Eventually, she worked up the courage to ask a question. What are you writing down? A to-do list, Kota answered, not looking away from his paper. Izuku used to write them down, but things are different now that we have our powers. What's a to-do list? Eri asked him curiously. It's a list of things I need to do. Kota rolled his eyes as he started the obvious. It's raining today, so I'm gonna go to the rich neighborhoods and ask if they want me to punch the clouds away and change the weather so I can get a shit ton of money. Then I'll head to the park and see if I can get people to pay me to do some lighting tricks. Why do we need so much money? Eri asked him. Using his powers, Kota had made a substantial amount of money, which he kept in a safe he found in the trash. Despite this, Kota only really ever spent money on food and took whatever else he needed from people who didn't want them anymore or the trash. Sure, money was good and it was the reason they could have 3 full meals a day. But Eri didn't understand why they'd need so much money if they barely used any of it. Because, I don't want us to suffer again. Kota muttered, just loud enough for Eri to hear him. We don't deserve to suffer again, we have power, now maybe if we have money, we won't ever have to suffer again. Kota didn't say another word, and Eri just watched him work. Most people wouldn't have found those words to be very touching, but Eri wasn't most people. After spending most of her memorable life in a place without love or care, she was able to siphon the affection from Kota's words, and it meant a lot to her. Just hearing that someone cared about her meant a lot to her. Another flashback, at some other point. Eri was back. Back at the scene of crime. Of her crime. She was back in the air, floating in the sky. Looking at where Overhaul had once been. Eri. She could hear Overhaul's voice in the wind. Not in any one place, but all around her. Surrounding her. It was like overhaul was in the air she breathed. His wrathful spirit choking her. You killed me. You're a monster. You've always been a monster. Eri wanted to do something. Run. Hide. Cry out. Anything. But her body refused to listen. She was trapped in her own mind. Eri! 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 Eri's eyes snapped open, and she shot upwards into a sitting-up position. She was hyperventilating as she looked around rapidly until her eyes landed on Izuku. It was pitch black, as it typically was in the mansion, seeing as they didn't have electricity and they didn't want to risk using a fire. They could have used their powers to power up a light source, but they agreed that it wasn't needed, and just kept a flashlight nearby just in case. This flashlight was currently being used by Izuku, who was kneeling beside her bed, with an extremely distressed and concerned expression that could only be seen thanks to the flashlight. Why, you were having a nightmare, Izuku told her. Oh, Eri said when she managed to calm her breathing. A new feeling of guilt joined the lingering fear from the nightmare. Seeing how upset she made Izuku, she felt the hatred for herself grow and burn within her. Why? Eri tried her best to stop the tears from coming out of her eyes, but it was no use as the waterworks started flowing. Why do I cause you so much trouble? Izuku and Kota almost died for her multiple times. And if it wasn't for her, they wouldn't have become vigilantes, and Izuku could have become a hero and Kota could have done whatever Kota wanted to do. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I'm so useless. Izuku flinched after hearing that. Bad memories being brought back to the surface. Useless. Worthless little shit. You should have never been born. As if he still held the speed of Mercury in his child form, Izuku moved forward and wrapped Eri up in a tight hug. No. Izuku shouted. The loudness and passion in which Izuku shouted that shocked Eri out of her sobbing. You are not useless. You're not. You're not a burden. You're not. Waha? Eri was taken off guard by how vehemently Izuku refuted her claims. As if calling herself useless offended him. He'd even started crying himself. I wanted to be a hero. But how could I call myself a hero if I didn't save you? Izuku cried. It was impossible for Eri not to take in Izuku's care and affection. The boy was just radiating with it, and it seeped into her. Like a warmth washing over her. It was so warm and nice that she didn't know how to handle it, and she started crying again. This time onto Izuku's shoulder. And once they were done, Eri was able to fall into a dreamless sleep. Free of the nightmares for now. Back in the present. Eri felt tears well up in her eyes, but she forced herself not to cry. She looked at Izuku with a nervous and desperate look. Are you sure he'll come back? Izuku summoned the most reassuring smile he could manage and gave Eri a head pat. I'm sure he will. After all, you're here too now. And I'm sure that nothing could stop him from coming back once he wants to. Not even All Might? Eri asked. Not even. Izuku paused, as he thought about what Eri had just said. And then his eyes went wide with fear. Eri, we need to go. But didn't you say Eri didn't get to finish. I forgot, All still hasn't gone on his patrol. If the new sees Kota while he's transformed, All might come and try to fight him. He won't stand a chance. Izuku jumped off the couch and ran for the door, with Eri quickly following behind him. Shazam! Crockham! Meanwhile, with Kota. Kota wished he had eaten before he left. While he was immune to hunger in his champion form, it lowered his, what did Izuku call it, mana pool? It lowered his mana pool, which was the amount of power they could use before being forced to transform back. Izuku had told them that the state of their normal bodies would affect their mana pool. If they were hungry or tired or injured, then their mana pool would be lowered. Izuku had even theorized that exercising would increase their mana pool, although they hadn't had time to test this result. And while Kota had plenty of energy, he thought it'd be better to eat now than later. So here he was, back in another convenience store. This time he actually intended to buy something with the money he kept on his person, rather than attempting to steal something. Although he still did have to resist the urge. The only reason I'm not stealing anything is because I don't want to get caught. Kota told himself as he pursued shelves. Not because I care about doing the right thing, freaking Izuku. Screw him. Kota had cooled down a bit after his argument with Izuku, but he was still determined to stay angry at him. He thinks he's so smart just because he's a year older. And he's so obsessed with heroes. Kota could feel his anger grow as he thought about it. Heroes this. Heroes that. He even got me to do it. Well, not anymore. Imnoru. And that's. Ah. Kota heard a terrified scream coming from the register, and his body froze. Give me the money. Kota's eyes widened as he heard what sounded like a robbery. No. What are the chances? Kota moved slowly to the end of the aisle, and peeked his head out at the register, to see a man holding a gun to the man at the register, who was cowering in fear of the weapon. Kota ducked back into the aisle. How? How did that idiot manage to rob the one store with me in it? He is so scree. Wait. All Might's still out there. I could probably beat him, but it wouldn't be easy. If I beat this guy he could show up. Please. I need this money. The cashier said. I don't care. Give it. The robber replied, holding the gun closer to the man. Kota grit his teeth. Nope. Not doing it, he'll be fine. He'll give the idiot the money and he'll be fine. And even if he's not, I don't care. I'm not a hero. I don't have to save him. The money. Now. The robber shouted, his voice getting more and more aggressive. Please. The cashier said. Kota could hear them crying in desperation, and his fist clenched as he tried to hold himself back. I'm not a hero. I fucking hate heroes. I don't have to do anything. Kota tried to convince himself. I'll shoot, I fucking swear. The robber shouted, reaching the end of his patience. God damn it. Shazam. Crockum. Both the cashier and the robber froze, as a bolt of lightning struck down, hitting something in the nearby aisle. What the hell was dash? The robber didn't get to finish his sentence, as before he could blink there was a hand around his throat and another one ripping the gun out of his hand. The robber could only barely see the absolutely pissed face of the transformed Kota before he was suddenly outside. Kota had moved them both through the door at super speed so he could take out his anger on him without damaging the store. Kota shoved him to the floor, where the robber fell on his ass and tried to crawl away backward out of fear. The villain's face was covered, but you could see the sheer terror in his eyes, as Kota loomed over him, with lightning crackling off his body and leaking from his eyes. You just had to pick this store. Kota didn't say anything else, before zapping the villain with lighting and rendering him unconscious. Kota looked at the smoking unconscious body of the villain in front of him, and he didn't feel any better. TCH, asshole. Then he heard the door to the convenience store open behind him, and when he turned around he saw the cashier exiting the store, looking at Kota. What? You gonna call me a menace too? Kota asked him bitterly. No. I just wanted to thank ya. The cashier said to him, giving him a polite bow. You just saved my ass. Kota's eyes widened in shock, the surprise being very evident on his face. Huh? Look, I know it's been rough. People have been anything but grateful. But you have your fans. The man revealed. You've saved a lot of folks. And not everyone is just gonna forget that because you're vigilantes. Well, it feels like it, Kota said doubtfully, still getting over the shock of someone actually thanking him for once. Yeah, but truly. Thank you. The man once again gave a bow, displaying his thankfulness. TCH. You already said that. Kota turned around and crossed his arms. Just as Kota was about to fly off, however. Slam. Just about 12 feet away on the road, something big slammed into the ground, kicking up dust and obscuring what or who it was. Oh, what now? Kota turned to the dust cloud, his hands crackling with electricity, ready to fight. Ah, Marvelaoui, said a familiar voice. I think it's time we finally met. From the dust, emerged the towering, intimidating figure. All Might. And that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please like, subscribe, share the video and support the original writer. See you in the next video?